Welcome to the 1 Million Years of Joy podcast. I'm Dr. Andrea Benaker, your host, and my intention is to inspire you to find more joy in your life through the stories from our guests and the science on joy and purpose. Hanna, welcome. It's such a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you, Andrea. I'm so excited to be here as well.
Hanna, you were ranked among the top 45 most influential architects in the Middle East a few years after getting your master's in architecture and starting your own design firm. Reflecting on your journey to date as a recognized architect, designer, and artist, what moments or projects stand out as defining milestones in your career?
I think for me, until today, every project feels like a milestone, to be honest, because we generally try to push the boundaries on every project and we try to really be creative on every project. And I think there are several milestones that come to mind. The first one being the first project I ever designed, or I actually got as that actually launched my company. It was just a small house for a family. First of all, it's a milestone because it's the first project, but also it was the first time we realized how much we can push the boundaries. I've always had the dream of pushing boundaries in architecture, experimenting with new things, but I was always wondering if that's going to be just a theory or if it's really possible with people. And the fact that this family believed in it and pushed and we pushed and we pushed and we came up with a product that was quite unique as an end result was a big step, a motivating step, let's say, for me and the team. And then there were several projects along the line that also were quite important. We won our first competition, which was the headquarters for a very cool initiative by Her Majesty Queen Rania in Jordan. And it was their main headquarters and their filming studio, and they're a very cool team. So we also managed to push the boundaries with them and into creating something that's quite exciting and different there. Another one that's a bit more recent was also that we recently completed the first zero energy bill house in Jordan. So it's a house that completely runs on with no electrical or heating bills or anything of the sort. Like you completely live in it without paying anything. And that was a very big achievement for many different reasons. Aside from it being zero energy bill, it really proved our model of believing in the way we work with nature, the way we work with the surrounding environment. Our focus on the link between health and architecture is very important, and we also managed to implement that there. I mean, that was a big one. Like that comes to my heart as a big milestone for that. And we broke the myth that green architecture has to be more expensive than normal architecture. We actually managed to build that house with the same, if not less, money than a normal house of the same size would have been built in that area. And yet it has a zero energy bill. So that was a big milestone. Maybe the other things that come to mind were, aside from our commissioned work, we also have been coming up with ideas that solve problems in the world around us. And we've recognized several problems that have been around for a very long time. And we found kind of radical different solutions to solve these problems. And we filmed them as videos and put them on social media, and they both went extremely viral and they were very well received, and we're actually making some of them happen now. So it's quite exciting. Maybe we can talk about details of that later, but we're building the first ever self-funding and self-sustaining park, like public park in Jordan, which we're hoping to become a model for all parks in Jordan, because we suffer from lack of parks, and therefore we found a way with our tough economic climate to build parks for free and to maintain them for free without costing the government or the taxpayers a single penny. And that was the biggest achievement there. So yeah, many milestones, but they all they're near to my heart, basically.
Incredible. Congratulations.
Thank you.
If you want to dive deep into the project where you did the video, let's do that now. Would that be okay with you?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So tell us more about that project. Like, what did it consist in exactly, and why do you believe the videos went viral?
Well, I think these are two very different questions. I think the reason it went viral, let's say, was we were proposing something positive, highly positive, at times where most things are quite negative and people crave like the negative news and stuff. So we try to break that mold, first of all, and go for some really positive, good news that's uplifting. And I think also people recognize the merit of the idea in the sense that we really suffer. I mean, Jordan is very different than Canada. We have a much more limited economic situation here. And therefore, even though everyone agrees that a public park is a priority and is a necessity, let's say, it's being treated as a luxury in most parts of our cities because we have other priorities that take precedence over it.
Mhm.
And we recognize as a team that we're either going to keep waiting until we become a richer country or we have to find a radical solution to solve this problem once and for all. And so we had been exploring the idea for many years. It wasn't an overnight idea into looking at how we can create public space and public assets that kind of fund themselves and run themselves so that we don't keep following the same excuse that we cannot build them because of our economic constraints. And so the idea was to look for a way to build the project without costing the government a single penny and to have it run without costing a single penny. And the way that was done is by, first of all, looking at all the private sector companies that spend millions and millions of dollars every year on CSR, corporate social responsibility, sorry, and community
Mhm.
service projects, and marketing. Also, a lot of money is spent on marketing by these massive corporations. And we thought, why not try to grab some of that money and employ it in a place that actually benefits the community. So we were looking for win-win-win situations, actually, in this case, where we thought we can take the money that these corporations are very happy to spend. It's not like we're stealing it from anyone. They're happy to spend money on marketing, on CSR, and taking it in a place that gives them the value that they want in return, which is exposure, which is helping communities, which is all these different things. And we use that money to build the park at the beginning, which is kind of the easier part. The tougher part in anything in life, I think, is always sustainability and longevity of projects. So we thought that we have to find a way for these parks to cover their own running costs and their own maintenance costs and their own everything costs, like all the running costs. So we started plugging in these small ideas that actually generate money. So whether we're talking about these small booths that can be rented out to different people who can sell coffee or food or different things within, or energy production. So we have solar panels in different parts of the park. I mean, all these like micro ideas that actually now cover the full cost of the park itself in terms of running and maintenance and everything. So this was a way to do that. And most importantly is that we're involving the local community heavily in the design process, in the management, and in the benefit of the park. So they're the ones who can start their micro businesses within the park. They can benefit financially from it and give back in return. So we created this ecosystem that I believe is kind of cohesive in itself that allows these things to grow and happen organically and then continue into the future. So that was the general idea. I can send you the link of the video. It's
Yes,
we
I'd
can
love
use.
that. That would be
Yeah.
awesome. And tell me about the house that you created that has zero energy costs. I'm so intrigued about that. And can you share with us some of the challenges that came in bringing that to life?
My specialty in architecture focuses on what I call passive green design, which is, I mean, green design is a big flashy word that everyone knows now, but not everyone recognizes the difference between active green design and passive green design. Active is the more known one. So you take a building, it consumes its energy, and then you start slapping on systems like photovoltaic panels or different solar panels that can cover the consumption of your building. What we do at my firm is that we focus a lot on passive green design, which means that we actually design the building to need less energy in the first place. We work closely with the site. We look at the movement of the sun. We look at the movement of the wind. We make sure you get full natural lighting, for example, during the day, so you don't have to turn on artificial lighting. It's these different things that in this particular house, we actually managed to reduce the consumption by 80% compared to a normal house of the same size. So that was a huge step already, and it was a lot of work. We used special software, we used different things to actually model the energy consumption of the building and the movement of the sun. We tweaked so many times. It took us months to do this at the beginning because it was our first experience in that. Now it became second nature to us, like we're doing it a lot. But basically, you design the building to reduce its consumption significantly. And then the remaining energy consumption, which of course is inevitable. I mean, you're always going to have appliances that are running in the house. Of course, at night you have to have lighting. You still have to have heating or air conditioning or whatever. But we reduced that by 80%. So it became very easy to then put in a little bit more, a small photovoltaic system to cover the entire energy cost of the house. So that's how you get to a net zero energy bill house entirely. So the whole building runs with no energy. And lastly, we also, for many reasons, mainly environmental reasons and practicality and energy consumption, we ditched the traditional diesel or gas burning systems for heating, and we're using modern electronic system that actually, it's a heat pump. I mean, it's very technical, but it uses the difference in temperature between indoor and outdoor to generate energy and heat up the home with a bit of electric consumption that's covered by the photovoltaics. So in summary, we went through a lot of research, investigation, and these different things to make it happen. I think that was the biggest challenge. We were working with a fantastic client who really believed in the idea, so that allowed us to also push the boundaries on there. But I'm happy to say that, again, we managed to achieve the zero energy bill house without it costing more than a normal house. It actually costs the same or even less than a normal house. And there we played a lot with materials and with tricks, and it's quite a special project in that sense.
So you clearly have an incredible opportunity to shape the physical environments in which people live, work, and play. What do you hope people will take away from your designs in terms of their impact on their lives and communities?
I think the biggest thing I'd hope that we can spread in terms of knowledge is that if you work with nature instead of against nature, really can get to a win-win scenario. Again, similarly, even with the world of green architecture, people always have this conception that it's either we have to go green or we have to benefit from a nice, beautiful design, and they don't see that there is a way to get both together. And I actually believe you get a lot more, you win a lot more if you work with nature and find a way to have your buildings and your life in general coexist with nature. I think that's a big target that I would like to leave behind or to inspire, let's say. And building on the idea of the park that I suggested earlier, I'm hoping that people will be inspired to replicate the model as many times as possible to create these public assets that improve people's lives without always having to be a burden. So I'm hoping to inspire that ability that you can create beauty and practicality without it always having to be seen as a burden. I think that's the biggest negative thing that pains me. Every People see everything as a challenge instead of looking at it as an opportunity. And I really, lastly, sorry, I really believe, I keep saying this, but the win-win, even win-win-win triangle, I think
Mhm.
is very important. I feel like the world works in isolation. Every entity, every ministry, my impression is that everyone keeps working on their own. And I have a feeling that the solution to our world problems is when people start putting their heads together and looking for win-win situations. So it's not about one person taking over someone else. I think we all have things in common that can benefit each other. And if we look for that common ground, I think magic can be produced.
And talking about magic, I'm curious to learn about the magical moment in your childhood that brought you that clarity to want to become a designer and an architect.
It's funny. Originally, I wasn't supposed to be an architect at all. I didn't even know about it at the beginning. I was always, since I was 6 years old, into art and of all kinds. So, playing the piano, singing in a choir, on theater, in filmmaking. I was obsessed with that world, and it was all about art. And then suddenly, when I was a teenager, my parents started designing our family home. At the time, I didn't miss a single meeting with the architect. I fell in love with the process, and at a very young age, I felt like I wanted to suggest ideas, and actually, some of them were taken and were implemented in the project. So I got very excited. And the architects at the time told me, "You have a natural skill." And I felt architecture was a perfect balance between my love for art and I'm a big science nerd. I was a math geek, physics geek. Like I loved that. So I think architecture was a good balance between the two, my two passions in life. It was a good middle ground for that. But yeah, the key moment was the design of my parents' home.
And today, what brings you the most joy in your work? And how do you hope to continue spreading that joy through your future projects and endeavors?
I think the most exciting moments. I mean, you have to know architecture it's a great industry, but it's slow. I mean, it takes forever for projects to happen and for them to be realized. But I think the biggest joy is when that day finally comes, when if it's a family moving into their home or a team moving into their new headquarters or a hotel operating, whatever the project is, just seeing the people who are occupying the space happy with their space and feeling like they achieved something through the project, that brings me so much happiness and joy. And I believe that maybe once we build the park, that's going to be the biggest piece of joy that I'll receive as a gift in my life, actually. Yeah.
You have worked on diverse projects around the world. And I'm curious to get your view on how do you find harmony between pushing boundaries with your vision for modern and sustainable design and meeting the functional needs of your clients?
See, that's the thing. To me, they're not separate items. I think they come in together. And again, the same win-win mentality, I think they do come hand in hand. So I don't see the division between saying, okay, we want to create an amazing project or a green project or a sustainable project, let's
Mhm.
say. I really think that they come in together. My research on green design not only shows me how to build buildings that don't consume energy and are good for the environment. There's a very big link between green design and a positive impact on mental and physical health, and this has been proven through science. And by the way, it's not rocket science. I mean, of course, it makes sense that once you design a green building, you have more exposure to natural light instead of artificial light. You have more exposure to natural air ventilation versus artificial air conditioned environments. So all these things actually have a direct impact on your health and therefore your happiness and therefore beauty and your perceived beauty of a space and all these different things. So I think they actually come hand in hand. To me, designing green is as basic as saying I want to design a smart layout house, right? So, I mean, naturally, a door is a particular size for a reason because you want a person to be able to walk in through it comfortably and not having to tuck down underneath it. To me, designing a house that responds to the movement of the sun around it and the wind around it is just, again, second nature. It's just I really believe if you're a good designer, you're a green designer. They're not conflicting concepts.
And you've now had your design firm for over 12 years.
Yeah.
Could you share with us what have been some of the biggest lessons learned along the way?
Many lessons learned. I think that surprisingly, what I learned the most is that the biggest challenge, and this is not exclusive to architecture, communication is more important than technical skills, technical knowledge, and everything else. I believe most people have good intentions. I mean, this is philosophical, but I believe 99% of people have good intentions. And I think that the struggles that arise between people are usually due to unclear communication or misunderstanding that happen there. And this, of course, in a profession like architecture, where you have so much information that's tucked into a few pieces of paper that then have to be translated into millions of dollars and miscommunications can happen, whether it's in writing or in drawing or whatever. So I feel like my biggest lesson is that to work with other humans, if you're not working with yourself, you have to have good communication skills and work on that. The other big lesson, I think, is I feel like people take life a bit too seriously. And I feel like a sense of fun needs to be injected in our lives. And I think we need to seek ways of doing that. And I feel like with what we're trying to do with architecture is to, even if we're designing a very serious thing like a headquarters for a bank or a home or whatever it is, that we can always find ways of making it more fun, making it more exciting, trying to break the mental barriers of what a house should look like or an office should look like, and just to challenge what these standards are. I know it sounds like a conclusion, but it's more of a lesson learned that this needs more work in the world to bring more joy to people as well. I think that's a big one. Yeah.
When you're looking at the role of AI in our world today, how do you plan to integrate AI in the design work that you do?
I am planning on integrating AI. I haven't used it yet for my custom designs, but I've been working the past few years on a system that allows people to actually, and this is a big secret, I haven't really revealed this yet, but we're working on a system that actually allows people more control over the design process where they actually become the designers. Of course, it's through a kind of app and stuff. So I think AI will definitely be an integral part of that. I'm not excited about having AI do the full work. I think there's pleasure in having someone do their own work, and therefore AI would, in my view, will be a kind of assistant and a guide, maybe a kind of virtual person that suggests things to you instead of just doing the work. Of course, it can be done where AI could just start producing full designs, and there are models now that are around. But I think that takes too much out of the exciting process, not just for the architect, but also for the client themselves. I feel like them deciding certain things and choosing options and adjusting things is important. But of course, AI, I think it would be ignorant to not acknowledge its power and how much it's going to change things. And I think AI would be a fantastic assistant to humans in the near future.
And if you were to design a futuristic city from scratch, what
Mm.
innovative features or technologies would you incorporate to ensure it promotes joy and sustainability for its inhabitants?
A very interesting question. I think, funnily enough, that everyone that imagines a futuristic city, we look at the Jetsons, we imagine these floating hovercrafts and these super shiny metallic glass buildings and such. But I think eventually, if I was going to design the future would look a lot less like that and lots more integrated and a lot more human. So I think that if we look at what happened after the world wars, there was a big rush towards very fast construction of efficient buildings that are essentially shoeboxes that people are living in. And actually, that became what the world inherited as modern architecture, let's say. And there's a big disconnect between people and nature. But I think that the world, with time, is realizing the importance that nature plays in our lives and how devastating the disconnection from that is. And therefore, I think that a futuristic city looks a lot less shiny. And yet, even though we're going to have, of course, a lot of towers and a lot of big buildings and skyscrapers and all that for density, but I think that I would see a lot of nature coming back into it in various forms. I would try to bring in the human scale as much as possible because you can build the biggest anything you want in the world, but the size of the human doesn't change, and humans need to feel significant rather than insignificant in these massive urban developments. Let's say. I think it's important to also kind of kill the car in a way. So again, that's maybe anti-modernist thinking, but trying to reduce commutes as much as possible, trying to have more space for people to walk and breathe and green space rather than. So I think that the city would be designed around that. A lot of mixed use, a lot of convenience, and a lot of greenery. Actually, a lot of greenery again.
Wonderful. And if you were to sum up your philosophy on joy and architecture in a few sentences, what would it be?
I think repeating what I said earlier, the idea of pumping in fun and finding ways to make spaces more exciting. I believe that architecture does play a role in behavior and in mindsets, and therefore I think architecture can inspire joy and can inspire people to be more active, more daring, taking life less seriously. And I just say that because I think that people eventually realize how fast life passes by, and I think we take people's judgments too seriously. We take our work too seriously. We take many things that are not really necessarily serious too seriously, and we miss out on joy. And therefore, I think with architecture, we can create spaces that always surprise you and always make you think and change your mind and have fun and sit on a beanbag instead of on a regular chair as a silly example. But I think that architecture can inspire behavior that then leads to joy, in my opinion.
You mentioned earlier that often, even within enterprises, we may be losing the ability to have fun or find joy in the process or the activities that we're doing. What do you believe we need to do collectively as leaders, as humans, as parents to actually bring more joy to this world?
That's a very deep question. I think the world needs to kind of rethink where we've gone with the way we work, with the way we sometimes imprison ourselves in certain, whether it's education facilities or work. And I think that we need to find a way to find more free time for everyone and more room for creativity, more room for unplanned activities, unplanned creativity. I think art actually is a great outlet that sadly most adults and grown-ups don't use, and by the art of different forms. Even sports, I think, to me is an art. I mean, just finding a way to express yourself, to play actually, play is very important. So I think if we played more, if we had more fun in whatever avenue that suits the person, it doesn't have to be one particular direction, and looking for ways. I mean, obviously everyone's running after money in their own way, and that's becoming a very tedious stressor in life. Maybe finding a way of making money in different avenues and collaborating more than slaving away. I think that could be beneficial for humanity in general.
And looking ahead, what legacy do you hope to leave through your architectural works?
I really think the win-win mentality is something I'm hoping to leave behind, and the idea of parks and public spaces that could be built in the way we were proposing earlier is, I'm hoping, a legacy that can be achieved there. And I think with the last effort that we're trying to do with the idea of the self-designed homes and the efficiency that happens in there, I'm hoping that this will inspire other people to rethink industries, to rethink how work can be done more efficiently so that everyone can benefit. So it costs less for people, for the clients. It's less headache for the architects. It's easier for the contractors. I mean, just finding ways of improving it. I'm hoping that's going to be a big legacy left behind.
If you were to look back into your younger days and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
So many pieces of advice. Of course, I mean, knowing what I know now, I wish I knew it earlier, even when I first started my company, not just when I was a kid. But yeah, I think I would advise myself to really learn about the power of partnerships, the power of looking for mutual benefits, the power of putting random brains together. Like I call it interdisciplinary breeding. It's where you bring people from very different fields, and I think that's where real magic happens. So you have your own skill set, your talent. If you're just surrounded by people who think the same way as you can do good work, but it can never really push or jump a particular boundary. I think my biggest advice to myself would be find people who have very different skill sets, very different abilities, and collaborate and create things together. And feel free to have unplanned meetings. I mean, once you recognize that the person in front of you is smart, just have a coffee, lunch, whatever you want to do it. Like just spend some time, brainstorm. You might come up with nothing, and it's fine because I mean, just pretend like you went to watch a bad movie and it's just done, and it's gone. Who cares, right? But magic could come out of that, and who knows what possibilities lie there.
And any final words of wisdom that you may wish to share with our audience?
Without sounding like a broken record, but I really, really think that the win-win model is something to look at in every single avenue in life. And whether, by the way, whether it's professional or personal or whatever, I think there are always ways that you can benefit someone, they can benefit you back without having to cost you both significant money or effort or whatever of the sort. And more closer to my profession, I think believing that sustainability and green design can be achieved in ways that also don't cost a lot of money and don't create these ugly buildings that's a stereotypical image of a green building. Yeah, I think those are the two pieces I would like to conclude with.
Great. Thank you so much, Hannah. It's been such a pleasure to speak with you today. And thank you for everything you have shared. And congratulations on all the wonderful work you're doing and keep shining.
Thank you so much for having me, Andrea.